Welcome to 1 Million Cups Kansas City. Before I say a few words, we're going to hand it over to Nick from Pear Deck to give you a couple instructions before his presentation today.
Awesome. Welcome, guys. So believe it or not, we're going to be using Pear Deck for our presentation. And so to participate and join in and follow along, you need to run to peardeck.com/join and then use a Google account, whether that's a personal Gmail account, a school account, a business account, and then enter that 5-digit code, AKWDD, and that will sign you into our presentation. It'll be much more fun if you follow along. So again, just peardeck.com/join, use any Gmail account that you might have. If you don't have a Gmail account, it takes like 2 minutes to set up, and enter AKWDD. Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Hey, how did we lose somebody already?
What's that? Oh, they probably just logged out of their phone. So I think there's more than one person out there. So we'll hope that more people join in.
Okay, well, welcome again to 1 Million Cups Kansas City. My name is Courtney. I'm one of your community organizers along with Kyle and Zach this morning. So welcome. We are a weekly entrepreneurial program that has 2 companies present for 6 minutes each, and then we open it up to the audience for Q&A. So if you have a question for the presenter, please raise your hand and we will come around with a mic. I would also like to welcome our expert panel this morning. Would you like to introduce yourselves?
Hi, everyone. I'm Aditya Valetti. I'm currently COO of the Lean Lab. We support education entrepreneurs. We're a startup accelerator for education, early stage entrepreneurs.
Hi, everyone. My name is Melissa Roberts. I am the Vice President of Communications and Outreach at the Enterprise Center. We also run the Mid-America Angels Investment Network, so if you're ever looking to get funding to grow your business, please come talk to me or one of my colleagues. We provide education, mentoring, and workshops, and shameless plug, if you have nothing to do at 11 o'clock today, we're actually having one at the Sprint Accelerator on the ROI of social ads. So I hope you'll join us.
Thank you. Okay, so who has checked into our 1MC app this morning already? Raise your hand. Okay, well, I think we need to see a few more hands raised, so please take your app check-in so you can provide feedback to the presenters. Without further ado, I would like to welcome Nick and Nick from Pear Deck.
Thanks.
Awesome. Hello. Awesome. So like I had mentioned before, if you want to join in and follow along with our Pear Deck presentation, you need to join in with the Pear Deck at peardeck.com/join and then enter in that 5-digit code, AKWDD. As you can see at the bottom of the screen here, we've got 27 students who have joined us, and so you'll all be acting as students for our presentation. And so I'm going to give everybody just a couple more seconds to get logged in here and install and make sure we can use all our time we have on the clock. Again, if you have a Gmail account, whether it's personal, it can be a business account as well, all you need to do is synchronously sign in with the Gmail account and then enter the 5-digit code, AKWDD. This is the experience that students would go through in the classroom to participate in a lesson with the teacher. So as soon as this is up in front of the classroom, students sign in synchronously, and you can see we've got about 36 students there logged in, so we'll go ahead and get started from there. So my name is Nick Park. I'm the partnership manager at Pear Deck.
My name's Nick DeBuell. I'm the VP of Sales. Been with the company for about a year.
And we make up half of our sales team here in the Kansas City Startup Village. I know Matthew's out there somewhere. So awesome. So we introduced ourselves. We want to do something a little different, especially with a room this size that you probably don't normally do, which is allow everybody to introduce yourselves as well. And so on your devices, you're prompted to answer in, and go ahead and answer in just your first name and your organization, so we can go around the room and kind of get a feel of who's here with us today, which is pretty cool. You don't normally get to do that with a room like that, but we thought, so since we introduced ourselves to you all, that you could return the favor, and we could go around the room and see everybody. Jeff with Score Offs. Hey, Jeff, welcome. Awesome. We also thought it would be kind of cool just to see where everybody's from in the room. And so if you have a touchscreen device or if you have a mouse, you can just drop a pin on your hometown, and we can see where everybody's from, which is also pretty cool. You can see a lot of Missouri and Kansas, which is expected, but we've also got some folks from California. which is great. Some Canada, maybe, or somebody's just lost, who knows. We also have a lot of people that are having fun with their devices. And so whenever students start having too much fun with the devices, you can lock them out. And so right now, everybody's locked into their response. So with Pear Deck, what we try to do is create powerful, real-time learning moments for everyone in the classroom. So both the teacher and the students. I want everybody to think back to a time, for some of you it might be longer or shorter than others, and say, did you use this in your classroom? So looks like a good percentage of us have, so that's great. Now think back again. Does this look familiar? Did anyone use this in the classroom? Okay. Okay, it's current times here still, which is great. How about this? So did anyone use this in the classroom? I was in the C category. I had to ask Nick what that was. So you can see, it's very apparent that with today's technology, again, anybody use this technology in their classroom today? Overwhelmingly no, but the reality is that in today's classroom, all of those devices are being used across the country and across the world at the fingertips of students, and they're being provided by the schools and by the states, and they have those at their fingertips to use. And so although with technology a lot has changed, at the same time,
in 1930, the Republican-controlled House of Representatives, in an effort to alleviate the effects of the, anyone? The Great Depression, passed anyone? The tariff bill, the Hawley-Smoot Tariff Act, which anyone raised or lowered? Raised tariffs in an effort to collect more revenue for the federal government. Did it work?
I stopped there because that's my favorite face. So as you can see, technology has advanced. It's advanced a great deal, but the classrooms themselves, they haven't so much. And so that although we have these smart, engaging technologies sitting in front of our students, the way that we've changed the classrooms and taught classroom lessons have not changed. And so at Pear Deck, we've developed a Google app to help solve that divide and help leverage the technology that sits in front of our students to actually engage classrooms. And so what Pear Deck does is it does two things. It does two things at once, and they're two very great things. For the student, it gives every student a voice. It gives not just the straight A students, not the rock star students that are always the first to raise their hand, but the students that might sit in the back of the classroom, might be shy, might be embarrassed, might be afraid to raise their hand and get a question wrong. So that's one. Two, the other great thing that Pear Deck does is that not only does it give a voice to that student, but the teacher is able to get insights from that student. So they're actually able to hear from the students that they might not have otherwise heard from. We do this by separating ourselves from other presentation tools like a PowerPoint or Google Slides that are very one-sided, where you're pushing content out at the audience. We do this by having two different views. So the student view is what is sitting in front of you all today on your various devices. This gives you a voice, and so you can actually interact with the presentation. The very insightful view for the teacher is that teacher view. That's what I'm holding up in front of me right here today. You can see that as the teacher, you gain a lot of insights about the classroom. And so you can understand who's participating, how they're participating, who's following along, maybe who isn't following along, who's getting the subject matter and who isn't. And then at any point, you're controlling the conversation. So you can either slow down or speed up based off of how the room and the classroom is learning. So the clip that we showed earlier is not an active classroom. And that is more of a passive lesson to where content is being pushed out. Statistics show that active learning is much more beneficial to the students. Students who do not like to participate do like using Pear Deck based off of a survey that we gave. And so those 9 out of 10 students that you're not hearing from today, Pear Deck gives you the ability to do that. And then finally, at Pear Deck, we understand that teachers are our biggest assets as a company, but they are also our biggest advocates and fans, and over 130,000 teachers are using the tool today.
Thank you, Nick. I'm going to share quickly some facts and trends about the business, and then might not be able to get to everything. We'll have to come back in some Q&A, but we're based in Iowa City. We just celebrated our 2nd birthday. As Nick said, we're in Kansas City here for sales. Our market, as Nick mentioned, is Google. So thankfully for us, Google is dominating not just the US educational market, but the world as well. So we're sort of riding that Google wave, which is really tremendous. 5 years ago, Apple really had the market share, and over the last 5 years, Google has taken over. We do have competitors that are creating awareness for us. I think one of the competitive advantages we have when we win against the competition is the Google integration that we have, which is very important. Of course, it influences directly the other main reason, which is ease of use. We're primarily focused in the US market. That's where we have hundreds of school and district customers, but we're also seeing some nice growth without really any effort outside of the US, which is exciting. Wanted to call out something that's not always very easy to accomplish, but we actually are experiencing negative revenue churn year over year. In terms of the way that we go to market, the way this all works, how do we make money? It starts with signups. We have a freemium model that exposes teachers to some premium features. They can then try those out for a period of time, and then they convert to a paid subscription, which is $100 a year. That's when Nick and the team here in Kansas City gets involved, tries to see where there are clusters of users, subscribers, and tries to give them a discounted group rate. In terms of growth, we're seeing a direct correlation between, which is not surprising, between an increase in teacher users, signups, and our bookings, which is 3x. Here, this is really just to show that we're obviously on a hockey stick type growth. I know there aren't a ton of numbers here, but that's very purposeful. But we are really excited about the growth trajectory that we're on. In terms of what we need from you all, the community, we have challenges, of course, like any good business. Ours is mainly in creating more awareness within the teaching world so that we can get more signups, basically the top of the funnel. To that end, we're looking for a VP of marketing to help us execute a strategy that's going to essentially create much more awareness and get more teachers through the funnel at the top so that we can get more of the schools and the districts to pay for Pear Deck. And of course, we're also seeking from you any introductions to great sales talent that loves not only to sell and make education work a little bit better than it does today, but also that likes to have fun. We're in Startup Village, as Nick said, and fun is a big part of what we do every day. Thank you. And so on your devices, if we may try this, let's see how this works. Anonymously, you can go ahead and ask your questions. I know traditionally when I've been to 1 Million Cups, it's been raise your hand, you have to identify yourself. If you're comfortable with that, that's fine, but I wanted to see how this works because I know in the past there are people next to me that wanted to ask a question, but they were simply too afraid to ask. So here, there's no reason why you should be afraid.
So we've got our first question here, Nick.
How much competition? Don't exactly know how to answer that. The person that asked that question would like to clarify. Okay, go ahead.
I just think, how many other companies are doing something similar?
Oh, great. Okay, so we have 3 direct competitors. Some are billion-dollar companies, like Smart Technology is one of them. And then we have others that are smaller, a little bit more like us. One of them is called Nearpod. I know I went quickly through that slide, but that's one of them as well.
So real quickly, actually, we're going to step back for a second and let our expert panel ask a couple questions, and then we can jump into the crowd, if that's all right.
Oh, okay.
You guys ready over there? All right.
I actually typed my question in, but can you go a little bit more into the classroom experience? So what sort of data do teachers get? And can they do tracking, or is this like more about is this more about the experience, or does this also track data and stuff?
Yeah, so I'll just go ahead and just show you just that. So what both Nick and I had in our hands was this view, which is the teacher view, which is going to give you all of those insights. And so we call that the dashboard view. You can have that on any device, so you can walk around the class with an iPad or an iPhone, which is great because it doesn't tether you to the device. So you can go help the student in the back of the room that has a question, or you can actually teach the class from the back of the classroom. But for some of those insights, right now I'll just sort these by response. And so now we're looking at our entire class. sorted by those who had questions. And so you can come in, and so as the teacher, because the students are logging in using their Google accounts that the schools have already set up with them, you instantly get their names and emails. And then any participations and questions that you have, you can always revisit and or export into a Google Sheet to have with you. So that's great to really, as the teacher, always keep those insights that you learn in the classroom that a lot of times you lose when you do a show of hands question. That's like a really poor question. It's like nobody learned anything from that. Or does anybody have any questions? And the room is just silent with crickets. You're able to ask those questions with Pear Deck and then keep those with you moving forward. And they're saved and stored in your Google Drive for as long as you keep those.
All right, so my question for you all is it looks in your kind of sales process side as though that enterprise level contract is always the goal. It's probably, I would assume, the most profitable kind of contract you can enter into. So when you land that contract, how do you facilitate user adoption, and what are some best practices that you use that maybe people here can learn from?
Sure, that's a good question. I'll take that one. So basically what we do is we have customer service staff that, depending on if it's a group account where it was 4 teachers that wanted to sign up for the premium edition, they would basically get some, I would say, low-touch videos on demand. We have webinars, of course, every week. But if it's more of a district-wide or a school-wide, where we may only have 30% of the teachers that are clamoring for Pear Deck, then we take a little bit more of a high-touch approach where we're doing specific PD sessions, trying to look at the subject matters that may present the most resistance to doing something different than what they're used to, which is passive lectures where typically half the classroom is not paying attention. So that's what we're really after, is trying to figure out where, on the high-touch side, where are the resistors, and what do we need to do to get them on board so that they can make Pear Deck a part of their toolkit, where they're not even thinking about putting together a passive PowerPoint presentation, where they're only going to get to maybe half of the class is going to be engaged. That's really what we're trying to accomplish.
And I'll add to that we're also very big about the data and analytics on the back end. And so when we go into one of those partnerships with a school or district, we set thresholds of like, what does success look like? And so whether that's the amount of teachers that are using the tool, the amount of students, the amount of web sessions, we monitor all of that. So it's not that you get to your end of subscription, everybody's surprised that they didn't use the tool. We monitor that throughout the length of their subscription so that we can step in when there is a need and do those PD sessions that Nick talked about.
So I love that process of setting key performance indicators and those goals that you can judge success by. I think that's a great best practice. One question I had kind of from the student user side is, if in the situation that you've got maybe some kids that are very fast learners in the class, it seems like this would prevent reading ahead or skipping ahead. How do you facilitate engagement kind of from people that may not learn traditionally in a lecture setting, but also people who do well in that setting?
So at the risk of letting this entire room of folks run wild, we did not showcase that feature, but we do have that, and that is the student paced mode. So at any point as the teacher, you can flip that on. And so when you do that, students are able to go through the lesson at their own pace. And so if that's assessment based and you wanted to ask 20 questions, obviously you don't want the entire classroom sitting around and waiting for the last student to answer. You can ask that, turn that on, every student runs through, and then we timestamp each of those answers. So then as the teacher, you can go back in and see exactly where every student was at that moment in time.
All right, we will now open up to the audience. If you guys want to take some questions from there, we can do that. But then if anybody wants to ask a longer question, just raise your hand. I'll come over with the microphone. So if you guys want to start with one up there, maybe we'll go back and forth between that and here.
Cool, that makes sense.
Okay, so at the top we had what sort of data do teachers get with Pear Deck? I think we've kind of answered that, but you get not only who is using it, but how much they're using it, when's the last time they've signed in, when did they sign up, down to what device did they use to sign in. So I think there's about 30 metrics that we monitor.
All right here in the front.
My question for you is, as far as getting a customer base, do you tend to go present to principals and try to get the school to take the financial load, or is a high percentage of this individual teachers go, hey, I see the advantage, I'm going to pay about $8 a month for this tool in my classroom?
So it can happen both ways, but the way that we approach it, because it's the one that makes the most sense, it's the one that's most natural, is first to get the teachers on board, get them to use it, and then what we're trying to do is actually get the principals that are all, I would say, maybe not all, but most of them have been former classroom teachers and were very good at it and moved up to a principal position. Once they see one of their fellow teachers use Pear Deck in the classroom, within seconds, typically, they get it. And so that's the approach that we're taking is, let's focus on the teachers, let's get clusters, let's provide professional development opportunities for the teachers, and then let's figure out when we can have a conversation with the principal, but not too early, because the real benefit for the principal is that their teachers and students are engaged like they never have been before, but it really starts first with the teacher adoption, so we're more focused on that end. It's not a bad thing, though, to create more awareness, and that's one of the things that we are challenged by, is creating a little bit more awareness. There are still people, believe it or not, in the Kansas City area that haven't heard of Pear Deck yet, and yet they're Google, their students have devices in front of them, and they're still using their devices for PowerPoint presentations.
So Chris had the $1 million question about cost. Cost for an individual teacher to purchase Pear Deck out of pocket or with classroom funds is $100. That's something we really try to avoid, is that teachers are just paying out of pocket themselves. So we do have group packages that admin can support to group together a department or maybe even an entire school at a much lower per teacher cost. The widest level that we have would be like the district level, which compared to the $100 per teacher cost can get down to even like $10 a teacher once it is scaled up.
Right here in the front.
Hey guys, thank you. My question is, do you think this is going to affect like human interactions? Because nowadays, for example, if you go to dinner, everyone is on their cell phones and they're not talking anymore or expressing themselves. Do you think it will affect kids in the way maybe they will be introverted, is the word? So do you think it will affect their interactions with others or the way they express themselves?
Sure, that's a good question.
Well, I would say they're not going to be taking devices out of the classroom. So Pear Deck is actually a tool to engage them with their devices. There will never not be computers in the classroom moving forward. And so that's actually what we're trying to do, is leverage those technologies to encourage engagement. When a lot of these schools first brought devices into their classrooms, they thought that that was checking the box and all the world's problems would be solved by having computers in front of the students, and that was very incorrect because that led to Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. And so by Pear Deck, the teacher can actually influence a lot of the content that's being pushed at the students and ask for their input and engagement.
Yeah, and I would add to maybe your question, for the students that you're describing that are already introverted, that's exactly, I think, one of the groups that we're trying to bring out of the shadows, so to speak. As a former teacher myself, and I know Tyson, where is he? Tyson's a former teacher as well. We both talked about this. We both struggled reaching the entire classroom. I mean, it's kind of crazy to think that as a teacher, that's why we got in the profession in the first place, I would engage every single student. Not just the ones that are in the front row raising their hands every 2 seconds, also the ones in the back that don't want to participate at all and don't want to share their ideas. Like I said earlier, we're founded by former teachers where this is a real passion for them because they struggled to reach every single student.
So here's a good question, and we get this question all the time. For schools that are not one-to-one, meaning every student has a device in front of them, Pear Deck is applicable across all products. So whether it's a cell phone, a tablet, a lot of teachers are nervous about the cell phone, which seems crazy to have all your students have their cell phones out in class. But yes, we work across all devices, and so it's called, they refer to it as BYOD, which is bring your own device. So for schools that do not have the capability to support their students, they encourage that students do bring their own devices in a lot of scenarios.
Yeah, and I would add, in terms of funding, there are thousands of grants that are available to low-income areas, school districts, where they can specifically fund not just the devices to be brought in, but also applications like Pear Deck.
Question back here.
Thanks, guys, for this presentation. With flipped learning becoming such a prominent, learning style, and I think you may have just mentioned that you can't take this out of the classroom. How do you guys handle kids that, maybe miss class or, prefer to study at home?
Great question as well. And I would what Nick was showing earlier about the student pace mode, that actually is also intended to help the students that have to be out for one day or multiple days or weeks. So basically the teacher just needs to enable the student pace mode, and those students that weren't there can still go through and complete the lesson.
Sorry, delay.
All right, so basically I was going to ask, we're going to ask you the final question, but I'm curious, since we didn't get to all these questions, can you guys go back and respond to each one of these and everybody get answered?
Yes.
Okay.
So what's great is that everybody is going to receive an email from us. We call it a Pear Deck takeaway. So as the students will use this as homework, as a study guide, and that's in the form of a Google document, which if you're familiar with Google Documents, it's live, interactive, real-time collaboration. And so Nick and I can actually go in to each of your documents and answer each one of these questions. And you can reply to, I think it'll be coming from my email. You can reply back directly to that email with any further questions you might have, but we will get all of that information. So we appreciate all the questions. It looks like we had about 25 questions, and we obviously did not get to anywhere close to that.
That's awesome, guys. That is sneaky lead gen. I like it. So the big 1 million cups question that we always end on, what can we as a community do to help you guys?
Sure. Well, I mentioned the two main things beyond if you have a teacher in your life, sharing this with them. That would be nice if you think it's worthwhile. But in the near term, we're looking for a VP of marketing talent. I think that's the one thing that's holding us back from growing even faster and spreading Pear Deck around the world. So that's the number one thing we're really looking for here in Q4. And then also sales talent. Right now we have a team of 4. We're hoping to add quite a few staff members in the coming months and hopefully years.
Where can people find those postings?
On LinkedIn, and then if you can put up our emails. If you know somebody and want to facilitate an introduction, I'd be very happy to talk to anybody that you think might be a good fit for Pear Deck.
All right, thank you so much, guys. Come connect with them after if you know anybody. Great job, Nick and Nick. All right, we're going to jump into announcements with the wonderful Melissa to start us off.
Yeah.
2-second delay. She's
Sorry,
getting there.
my
There it
mic was
is.
not
There it
primed
is.
and ready. But hi, everyone. Again, I'm Melissa from the Enterprise Center. The team asked me to say a couple of words about a great opportunity for those of you who, again, are looking to fund your company at the seed or early Series A level. Every year, alternating between Kansas City and St. Louis, there's a conference called Invest Midwest. And this is an investment forum that you can attend, pitch your company to a room full of angel investors, angel network representatives, and venture capital. So if you think you're at the stage where your company would be attractive to VC and you're looking to raise a Series A round, consider applying to Invest Midwest. The applications are open today, although the conference is not until March of next year, but it's investmidwestforum.com.
Awesome, thank you, Melissa. And if there's any students in the crowd, highly recommend trying to find a way to volunteer there. I did it last year, met a ton of people. It was a great time. So that said, Joni, Pipeline team, you guys ready? Come on up. I'm gonna start with a video as we all get this together.
Tim in slow-mo. This is just to wake you up with some music. It's really painless. You want to do it again and say no music?
I'm gonna be nice anyway. I think that's actually.
Look, if you had one shot, or one opportunity,
Well, while they're doing that, because we all know
Look, if you had one shot, one opportunity to seize everything you ever wanted in one moment, would you capture it? Just let it slip. Yo.
I know I am loud. Pipeline Day. Happy Pipeline Day. Happy Pipeline Day. We just made it up. And what it means is it is our focus on the community and our next class and our next additions to the Pipeline family. And so when you see all this brand, not that we don't wear a lot of swag all the time, we do, it means we have 1 week left for applications for the fellowship for Pipeline's 2017 class. We are here at the Kauffman Foundation, which, thank goodness, 5 years ago allowed us to be available to high-impact entrepreneurs outside of just Kansas. So now, if you are a high-impact entrepreneur, so you're trying to build something of significant scale, you're showing some traction, you really want to be around other peers doing the same, if you are in Kansas, Missouri, Nebraska, we would like for you to apply. We've made the application super simple on the front end so that if you are called in for a semifinal interview, that's when we really get into some extra information. So it's not that hard to apply, but I want to just turn it over to the entrepreneurs to explain not only what Pipeline means for them their fellowship year, their first year, but Pipeline is an ongoing professional development organization for high-growth entrepreneurs. And I know you guys have all heard about Toby Rush's exit, and he's been very loud and proud about finding his origins and his ability to scale through his work in Pipeline, and has been very generous about that conversation. But he is not the only one, and I am flanked, I should say flanked because I want to be flanked, by entrepreneurs that have been in current classes all the way to the charter class. And so they're here just to encourage you and explain how Pipeline is not an accelerator or one-year organization. It is a family that is growing for life. It's a cult.
Thanks, Joni. My name is Tim Donnelly. I'm founder and CEO of SoftView. I started my software company approximately 16 years ago. We've had numerous iterations about our business, but I'm most grateful for being here with my fellow pipeliners, and also for what Mr. K did for our community so long ago and how it's endured over the years. So a couple of things. Number one, I blindly got into this organization, and again, I stand here very grateful for being a part of this ecosystem, and Toby Rush's deal was phenomenal. I was proud to be a part of that investment. And we look to pay it forward, and in many ways. And the membership of our organization allows us to collaborate together, to be on each other's boards, to invest in each other's companies. And it's a blessing to be a part of such a great and supporting group. And we thank the Kansas City and Midwest communities for allowing us to do what we do best, and that's innovate and grow companies. I'm going to pass it over to Laura to tell you more.
We assume you all know who Toby Rush is, but in case you don't, he's the CEO of iVerify, and they just had an acquisition by Alibaba of over $100 million. So that just catches everybody up in case you're wondering, who the heck is Toby Rush? And then when we say high growth entrepreneurs, I want to just rewind a minute, because when I came into Pipeline, I had a tiny little idea and no money, and I heard about it in this audience. So I had done that sweaty palms presentation, the first Million Cups presentation, where your knees are weak and you don't really know who the audience is or why you're here. But everybody in the audience probably is an entrepreneur. Are you all entrepreneurs? Raise your hand. Everybody? You got an idea? That's what we want, because the business that a lot of us end up with isn't what we start with. So it's the people that we're looking for, and we look for people who get up out of bed on things like Wednesdays and come and want to learn and grow. So this is the place for you. You don't have to be already there. When you say high growth, that's scary, right? It's what you're trying to do, and that you want to do something yourself, and we are the network that can help you. They don't take equity. They also don't provide funding, but you get a full year of benefit in this program, and it's unlike anything you've ever heard of. I'll be here afterwards. I'm wearing a different Pipeline shirt, but it says ridiculously awesome entrepreneurs, and everybody that I've met in the program is just that. If you want to know a little bit more about it, come see me. Who's applied in here? Anybody applied? Good. Good. If you haven't, and you just said you were an entrepreneur, I want to ask you why. You don't have to answer me right now. But if you're really trying to go somewhere, let us help you. Let us help you.
Guys, I have to cut you off right there. Sorry, we got to jump into this next presenter.
Can we do a crowd selfie? Because
You got to do a crowd selfie. I mean, you got to do the crowd selfie.
this morning, so we want to do a crowd selfie. Hold on, Tim, you're better at this.
Get in this team. Stop looking so excited, guys.
Way more animated than the other 1 million cup cities. So if you could look a little super excited, make it happen for us. Arms up, arms up. Woo! Thank you.
Yes. All right, thank you guys.
Okay. Shameless plug. Roxy's in the back with Amazon cards, so if you can write a review, that would be awesome.
Roxy's in the back. Write a review on Amazon to summarize. And all the announcements are on the back of the announcement sheet in the back. And with that, we'll welcome up Missouri Business Alert. Round of applause, member. Clapping. Good job.
Are you going to stand here and do it? Okay, thanks.
Hi, I'm Laura.
Lots of wonderful technical difficulties. Is it working now?
Yeah, it's on.
There
Okay, there we
go.
go. Excellent. And I'm Michael Stacy, and we are 2/3 of the Missouri Business Alert team. So it's not exactly breaking news that news is broken. The industry has been disrupted, and the business model for traditional media is sort of in disarray. When Missouri Business Alert was started, this is sort of what the landscape looked like, basically something out of a Mad Max movie. Basically, a lot of legacy media outlets are no longer generating the revenue they once were, and they've had to slash staff and in some cases shut down. So what this means to Missouri and to business is that a lot of the important stories that were once being covered no longer are. Meanwhile, if we look at the educational landscape, you would think that maybe there would be people out there training future business journalists to sort of navigate this uncertain future of the media, and yet when Missouri Business Alert got its start, this was the landscape of educational institutions that had hands-on learning labs for business journalism. It just didn't exist. So two pretty clear problems, and I'm gonna hand it off to Laura for an explanation of how we're working on solving those.
So after we saw all the problems and this big opportunity, a group of students at the University of Missouri Journalism School worked with industry professionals to create Missouri Business Alert, which is a digital newsroom covering statewide business news. We focus on our dual mission. Part one is providing news and information that the statewide business and entrepreneurial communities are lacking to help them make informed business decisions. And part two, educating students in entrepreneurship and business journalism through hyper-focused courses and hands-on Missouri Method newsrooms overseen by professionals. So we call ourselves a digital newsroom, and there's really no single definition of that, but we utilize the term to explain the non-traditional way that we distribute our content. Currently, we provide content through four main mediums, which is our website, email newsletters, events, and syndication partnerships. So the website recently relaunched as mobile responsive, and it includes text articles, infographics, podcasts, and video. It's all designed to help readers gain deeper insight into our coverage areas. Our email newsletters curate the top news from across the state and deliver it directly into readers' inboxes. We also host events aimed at the entrepreneurial community with discussion topics ranging from founders to funding. And lastly, we have a host of syndication partnerships with local and Missouri-based newsrooms in which our content is distributed through their delivery channels. Now, as you may have noticed, these four content platforms exclude one major platform, which is print, but we believe this to be one of our major strengths, as print distribution is expensive and time-intensive. In choosing these distribution platforms, we have avoided traditional distribution costs and been able to provide news in a timely, up-to-the-minute fashion. So we have these great distribution channels, but the next question was, how do we make money? How can we become self-sufficient in a struggling industry? So we knew that the basic classifieds plus subscriptions model used by traditional outlets wouldn't be enough, and we knew that we had to come up with some innovative revenue streams to help keep us running as a sustainable publication. So we looked at 6 major areas of opportunity: advertising and sponsorships, events, data tools, job board, subscriptions, and licensing. Currently, we're focusing on 2 of those streams. Our advertising and sponsorship stream includes display advertising, video pre-roll and post-roll, native advertising, and content sponsorship. And our event stream pulls revenue from 2 channels, which is ticket sales and event sponsors. In the near future, however, we will begin to explore the last 4 streams. Students have to date developed some data scrapers that have been used internally, but we plan to white label these and future tools to other organizations. Secondly, our job board will allow Missouri-based job posters and job seekers to find each other in a pretty cluttered arena. Our subscriptions stream will allow readers access to premium content, both on the website and on our planned verticals, such as legal, healthcare, and entrepreneurship. And lastly, we plan to license our concept and materials to universities and colleges in other states and serve as consultants to those new business alert entities. So our focus on developing these revenue streams and our content distribution strategy has led to some really amazing progress to date, but I will hand that off to Michael now to talk about.
Right, so I get to talk about the fun part, which is kind of what we've been able to do thus far. People ask me a lot, what does success look like for Missouri Business Alert? And I feel like this year we've begun to realize that. Thanks to the generous support of the Kauffman Foundation, we've been able to double our team from 1 to 2. And we've also revamped the website and made some other tech fixes. So it's been a really big year, and the Kauffman support has served as great validation for us and has helped us scale up a little bit. Now, what does future success look like? I think we'd all like to be like Scrooge McDuck, swimming in money. And more seriously, though, this is currently an organization that's been supported by grants and universities, but ultimately we will become self-sustaining and profitable. And our grand vision is to scale this model at universities and in communities across the nation once we've perfected it here in Missouri. But more accurately, I think our success goes back to that dual mission that we mentioned. So it's providing news and information to the Missouri business community, whether that be iVerify's exit that Joni mentioned, or whether it be the rise of social entrepreneurship here in Kansas City with the Grooming Project, and rightfully so, or whether it's way back when Shot Tracker and Davion Ross raised their first capital. So we've covered all of those stories, and we want to continue to cover business news in the state. And lastly, it's delivering on that educational mission that we mentioned. So it's Derek Ho, who was our first designer and designed our initial website, who's now leading digital strategy for McClatchy. It's Tatiana Darrier, who was a reporter who did everything for us and is now doing everything for Bloomberg. It's Natalie Cheng, who was bitten by the entrepreneurial bug when she was with us and went on to become the CEO of a media startup called The Riveter. Or it's Francesco Marconi, who about 3 years out of grad school at the ripe age of 27 became the lead strategist for the Associated Press. So we've got a lot of successful students out there who are kind of changing the face of media, and that's something we're very proud of. And with that, we will open the floor to questions.
All right, we'll open it up to the expert panel first.
Can you talk a little bit more about how like training students is a part, a part of the work that you do?
Yeah, so at the Mizzou J School, the model is sort of teaching by doing. So at most of the outlets there, you've got professional managers and then student staff, and they come to us through various classes, whether it be a marketing class or a sales class or a business reporting class. And for the course of a semester, they learn under our leadership. And we just throw them right into the mix. I'm sure some people in the room here have probably talked to our reporters or dealt with our sales folks, but it's basically learning by doing. So.
Sorry, I have to get better at that delay thing. So my question for you is, it seems that one of the most traditional metrics for the success of a journalistic outlet is how many stories you're breaking. So how many stories are you guys breaking? And do you think that's a flawed metric, or is that something that's really important to you?
That's a good question. And at the moment, the breaking news is quite honestly not our forte. We're more of deeper dives and connecting the dots because we are a statewide news outlet. So we're trying to connect the dots between the legislation that's coming out in Jefferson City and how that affects the bottom line of business people across the state, or how maybe a Mobec fund out of Jeff City is allowing entrepreneurs to lift up their businesses elsewhere. So we're a little bit at the moment more magazine style. We lean on our publishing partners for the breaking news. So we've got partnerships with about a dozen publications across the state and then a couple national outlets. And we sort of syndicate their stuff and then sink our teeth into the deeper dives.
Cool. So kind of another follow-up about how you choose news priorities. Where do you draw the line between telling stories that are inclusive of everyone? So like, the far side of that spectrum being reprinting every press release that you see, and really telling strategic stories that no one else can find.
Right. I have personally a soft spot for entrepreneurs and those early stage companies. I've covered those in past jobs. And so we make that part of our mission to kind of find those off the beaten path stories. At the same time, we do try and think of impact. And so if Monsanto is getting acquired or if AB InBev is merging, that's a big story because those are huge Missouri companies. So we're trying to strike a balance between kind of those big companies and the early stage companies, if that's what you're asking.
Well, and then my last question, sorry, I'm a media geek. In an age where it's highly competitive, what do you think is the most underreported story in the Missouri business world today?
Question. And as an aside here, I'm kind of dominating these questions because news is my sphere of influence and Laura is our sales and marketing person, so I'm not just dominating the conversation. But I think a lot of the early stage funding landscape, frankly, is an interesting thing. Particularly with the rise of these accelerators and incubators and some state funding going into that. And I'm curious to see what the long-term impact of that programming is because there's been a huge rise in it and we're 3 years into most of these, so 5, 7, 10 years down the line. What does that mean to economic development in Missouri?
All right, we'll open it up to the crowd. If you have a question, raise your hand, we'll come around. I got one to start it off. Can you compare, so obviously are you familiar with Startland News?
Yes.
Can you compare a little bit the differences between you guys and Startland News?
Absolutely, and they are, I mentioned those dozen or so publishing partners, they are one of ours. And when we say publishing partnerships, we're free to syndicate their stuff and they are free to syndicate our material as well. So Startland does a fantastic job covering the Kansas City startup scene. We cover the entire state, so that is one difference. And then we also cover all other industries, whereas Startland's wheelhouse is more the entrepreneurship. So we'll cover ag, we'll cover retail, we'll cover banking and finance, which Startland doesn't do as much. And when we align with these strategic partners, that's kind of what we're trying to do is provide value where we can and get their strengths and incorporate that into our product.
Great, question right here.
So just to clarify, it's only business news that you're promoting, and I just also wanted to comment on the presentation. I sort of got lost in your part of the presentation because you were reading and not engaging in the screen. So I think if you're doing these presentations more often, you can engage with the screen. I think it would be a little bit easier to follow what you were saying.
Okay. Yeah.
So thanks for the feedback there. And to your question, yes, it is purely business. There are some tangents that we'll touch on, for instance, politics as it pertains to the business community, legislation that's important to business people. But whether it's retail or whether it's agriculture or early stage tech or things like that, we cover kind of the whole spectrum of business. So.
Hey guys, question in the back to your left here.
Yeah, I'm wondering about, I think one of the big challenges is not just reporting, but how consumers are getting and digesting and interacting with news. So I can see the focus on doing the really good journalism. Is there a focus on kind of how to, what the user experience is or how to compete with social media and all the other things going on to help people understand really important news and see it and interact with it?
Right, so going back to the way that we're distributing our content, We got the text articles on the site, which usually have an infographic involved, try to be pretty engaging with those. And then we do videos and podcasts as well for the crowd that may not be inclined to sit down and read a 20-minute long article. And then we do our events, which we think bring valuable information to the people who attend them. And then lastly, those syndication partnerships, so other people utilizing our stuff either in print or on their own websites, we help tell those stories as well.
Yeah, and I would add that we're pretty bullish on newsletters. We're not the Skim, we don't have 40% open rates, but we are about 10% above industry average. And we're growing a good audience there and getting lots of good engagement there, and we are pretty optimistic about that as a delivery mechanism. Shameless plug here, if you guys go to the MissouriBusinessAlert.com/subscribe, you can sign up for those new newsletters. We have one that delivers your top stories of the day every morning, and then a weekly roundup of startup news from across the state. So.
And it's totally free, so you should do it.
Question over here to your left, guys. Right here.
Yeah, I was wondering what the demographics is of your best customer. It appears to be like the Business Journal, which is my best customer, and it's just practical to get information in reference to what's important and happening within the entrepreneurial world. I love what you're doing.
Take that one.
So are you looking for like location data or?
World is who I want to reach.
Right. Yes.
Graphics is of your best customer.
Right, okay, yeah, so right now it's a big swath of I-70, so a lot of Kansas City, Columbia, and St. Louis, looking to expand to other parts of the state as well. And we certainly cover other parts of the state, but those are the three main areas. And then as far as other demographic data, the main readership right now is around 25 to 40 range, which is, we think, a big strength of ours. And then as far as other data, we have a lot of entrepreneurs reading, and then a lot of people who work in legislation or work around legislation.
All right. You mentioned podcasts. Can you tell us what you're up to in the podcast space and how you plan on differentiating yourself from all the other entrepreneurial podcasts out there?
Definitely. Our podcast was actually a brainchild of one of our students who launched it as a capstone project. And it's a podcast that focuses on business and personal finance from a millennial perspective. So it's definitely a different tone than a lot of what you'll get from more buttoned down outlets. And it brings this kind of young, fresh voice and explores whether it's the business around emojis or getting the first job and kind of adulting, if you will. So it's a little bit of a change of pace from our traditional audience and our traditional business coverage, but it brings kind of a younger voice, and we're trying to capture a younger audience with that.
Yeah, so I know you mentioned you had all those people that worked with you that had moved on to other networks. What exactly do they do with you? And just kind of curious, like, why wouldn't they stick with you guys? Or why, obviously these are huge opportunities, but what's the thought process around what they were doing with you and why they essentially moved on?
At the moment, we are sort of a launch pad for these talented journalists and strategists and business people. Ultimately, we'd like to be able to retain some of that talent, but it's just a resources thing. We don't have the funding at the moment to keep them on board. So we're happy to send them off to change the landscape. But within 2 years, at our current rate, we're going to reach sustainability, at which point we can have the resources to keep some of those people in-house. And I think that's when things get really exciting and the growth really ramps up.
And speaking to what they did for us specifically, like Michael mentioned, Derek was our first designer. He designed our initial website. Tatiana was a really, really great reporter for us, covered a whole range of beats. Same with Natalie, she did more multimedia stuff. And then Francesco was one of our first strategists. So.
Delay. Final question, what can we as a community do for you?
I think we would ask for kind of two things. One would be your eyes and ears, so check out what we're doing, read our newsletters, listen to our podcasts, watch our video, and share it with other folks who might be interested in it. Also, we would ask for your feedback, so we want to know what we're doing well, and most importantly, what we could be doing better, because we improve when we get feedback from you all. So would welcome your feedback, and also bring us your stories. We want to tell your stories and help continue to cover the important stories of Missouri business people.
Excellent. Thank you both very much. Round of applause for these fine folks. Awesome. Thank you all for joining us this morning. If you haven't yet already, be sure and log in to our 1 Million Cups app to leave feedback for both of our companies and also the event as a whole. And we will see you next Wednesday for KC Drone Company and Yummylicious Cookie Company. I see a unique partnership on the way. Have a great Wednesday, guys.